This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So I want to do a fun exercise, which is a way too early mock draft, but I'm not just going to get into a simulator and pick at 8 where the Browns currently are and see who's going to be there and do that. I find that to be a pretty worthless exercise in my opinion, because the Browns season is not going to end today. Right? Like, their season is going to continue. They're going to play games. Maybe they win some, maybe they lose some. Who knows how the rest of the season plays out, but it's not going to end today. So what their draft position is November 29th is pretty irrelevant. It does not matter. It is the least important thing in the world. And speculating on who the Browns would draft based on where they would pick if the season ended today is pointless, because that's not how it's going to be there. The teams ahead of the Browns, that's not who's going to be there, right? I can't just look at a mock draft in a vacuum and think that it creates value. So how do you make a mock draft that is, at best, slightly more than worthless? Well, you kind of take a copy from what NFL franchises do. They run mock drafts all the time, but they're not just jumping into the simulator and seeing what the simulator is telling them. NFL teams do mock drafts two different ways, right? They project out the rest of the season and then run automated projections based on that. We'll do a couple of those in this mock draft. And then they also do that same concept, but manually run through the picks to see what kind of scenarios could potentially pop up. And that is also something that we're going to do in this video. So this is a more in-depth scientific mock draft. I have projected the Browns record at the end of the season, so let's get to that part, right? So what is the draft order going to ultimately be? This is my projection of it, right? I think Jacksonville will have the number 1 overall pick. The Jets will have the number 2. The Panthers will have the number 3. The Saints will have the number 4. The Giants will have the number 5. The Raiders will have the number 6. The Patriots will have the 7th. The Titans will have the 8th. The Cowboys will have the 9th. The Bears will have the 10th. The Colts will have the 11th. And the Browns will have the 12th. Now, how did I come to this draft order? Well, I went through every single game up until the conference championship games and basically picked who I think should win in these games, right? This is based off of how I feel each team is doing, what teams I feel like are playing better, playing not. And I also did two different versions of this, right? There is the version of this where the Browns are... I also did two different versions of this, right? There is the version of this where the Browns win on Monday night and the version of this where the Browns don't win on Monday night. Just in case you are curious, this is how I projected the Browns rest of the season to go. They could either win or lose Monday versus the Broncos. I factored both of those scenarios in. I do not think they're going to beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh. I do not think they're going to beat the Chiefs in Kansas City. Well, not in Kansas City, at home. The Bengals Thursday night, I do think the Browns will split that series with the Bengals, and then I think they could win that game versus Miami. I think they either lose this game versus the Broncos and win against Miami. I think they can win both of those games. Like, those are the big toss-ups left on the schedule. And because I think that the Ravens are going to be the division leader by the end of the year, I don't think they're going to play their starters, because if they lose this game, they still win the division. Nothing really changes for them, right? They end up being the 3 seed. And I think they'll rest their starters in this scenario, and they will put the Browns in position to win that game. We finish 7-10. That's my theory on what's going to happen for the rest of the season, and that's what it does to the draft order if the Browns finish 7-10 in that exact way, or if they lose to the Broncos, they would be the 10th pick. So What I have here are 5 different mock draft simulators set up. I have a couple of them for manual, right? So this is if the Browns lose to the Broncos, a manual selection there, and then a manual selection here. I also have 3 automatic drafts with an adjusted order, right? I have this one, which is the stock order that you're getting right now. I have this one, which is my adjusted order, and we're going to do that for 3 rounds. And then I have my regular drafts here. So that is what we're going to go through and do and see what happens in these mock draft simulators. Let's jump into it. I hope you guys have fun with this exercise, or as much fun as I think I'm going to have. So let's jump into the first manual scenario, right, where we're just going through the first 9 picks in the draft. This is a scenario where the Browns potentially lose to the Broncos on Monday Night Football, or you can say they lose to the Miami Dolphins. They basically finish at 6 wins. What happens here if the Browns finish at 6 wins with the top 10 at the draft? Let's enter. All right. So if we look at this top 10, we got to ask ourselves some questions. First thing is quarterback. How many teams in this top 10 are realistically going to draft a quarterback? The Jaguars will not likely draft a quarterback. The Jets, not likely. It's possible they draft a quarterback, but I don't find it likely. I also don't think there's a scenario where the Jets take Shedeur Sanders, who would be the only quarterback you could justify taking at number 2. For the obvious reasons of like the Sanders family versus the Rodgers family. I don't think that's what they want. The Panthers do not look like they're going to take a quarterback. The Saints will probably not take a quarterback. They have Derek Carr under contract for a couple of years, and they're kind of stuck with it. And they like Spencer Rattler a lot. The Las Vegas Raiders will be in the mix at quarterback, but they're not married to quarterback. The Giants will be in the mix at quarterback, but they're not married to quarterback. The New England Patriots will not be taking a quarterback. The Tennessee Titans could take a quarterback. The Browns could take a quarterback. So there's 4 teams I think have a chance to take a quarterback. I do think one of these teams will trade for Kirk Cousins. I do think one of these teams are going to sign Sam Darnold. Now, if I were to tell you who I think the favorites for both of those things are, I think the Browns will be heavy players in the Kirk Cousins market, and I think the Browns will be heavy players in the Sam Darnold market. I don't know if they'll be successful in landing either of them. Kirk Cousins is going to come down to draft capital. The Browns do have excess draft capital to make that happen. If you're worried about salary cap, it's not going to be something that the Browns cannot maneuver around. Shout out to Jack Duffin. He has multiple articles about how the Browns can maneuver around this. And go ahead, get Kirk Cousins if that's what you wanted to do. I think there will be interest there. Kevin and this team seems to think that they can kind of not run it back, but kind of reload instead of completely rebuild. They have some players who want to win now. I think going after Kirk Cousins would be a way to make that argument. I think another way to make that argument would be going after Sam Darnold. And those would be the only 2 moves the Browns could make in this offseason that I think would prevent them from drafting a quarterback in 2025. Those are the 2 moves. I don't even know if trading for Kirk Cousins prevents them from drafting a quarterback potentially in this draft. But if we're talking about first rounds, I doubt the Browns will trade for Kirk Cousins and then draft the quarterback in the first round. Unless they love Shedeur and he falls to them at 9, right? But other than that, I don't think that's going to be the case. Sam Darnold, I do think that if I'm looking at this from Sam Darnold's perspective of all the teams that will be looking, right, where you're probably looking at the Browns, you're probably looking at the Titans, you're probably looking at the New York Giants, and you're probably looking at the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't know if the Raiders would be very appealing given how they ran. The same could be said for the New York Giants, even though they have some appealing stuff. They have really good defense. They have some young wide receivers, right? They have Malik Neighbors. They have Jalen Hyatt, if you like him, right? But they have some young wide receivers. The offensive line is with the New York Giants, certainly in a better place than Cleveland Browns is. But it really depends on who the Giants hire to be head coach, or if they fire Brian Dable. That will be a factor that leads heavily with the New York Giants. They get a hire that makes sense for Sam Darnold. They'll be a heavy player for him. They might land him. The Titans, this is a tougher call, right? Because I don't really see, other than like the Titans have spent a lot of resources on the offensive line, the appeal to the Titans for Sam Darnold. I think it will probably come down to the New York Giants and the Cleveland Browns for Sam Darnold. Now, what does that cost? Probably somewhere between $13 to $18 million for like, 2 years? So you're talking about a 2-year deal for like $36 million for Sam Darnold. It's a lot of money, man. That's a lot of money for Sam. I don't know if I'm okay with it, but I think it is something that they will consider. I don't think re-signing Jameis Winston would prevent the Browns from taking a quarterback. I think if you go anything lower than Sam Darnold, you're saying we're moving on to the next quarterback. And I think there's even a chance if you do that with Kirk Cousins. So let's assume one of these teams gets Kirk Cousins, one of these teams gets Sam Darnold. Let's say that the Giants get Kirk Cousins and the Titans get Sam Darnold. They're not going to be taking quarterbacks, right? So now let's look at what happens in this draft and who would be there for the Browns to select with this scenario, right? Because number one overall, it's going to be a little bit different, right? They could go Travis Hunter. They could go Will Johnson, but a corner number one overall is kind of crazy. Will Campbell, who kind of projects to be a guard, could go there, or Kelvin Banks. Let's say the Jaguars take Kelvin Banks. They need a tackle. All right. Now we look at the Jets, who have quarterback, tight end, defensive interior, and cornerback on their board. And let's say they take Will Johnson, a cornerback. That would make a lot of sense for them. The Carolina Panthers are now on the clock. Travis Hunter is there. I think they'll do it. I think they will actually go after Travis Hunter, because like the thing with their Dave Tepper, their owner in Carolina, he tends to make moves that feel like they're more about business than they are about football. And Travis Hunter is 1,000% a move that you would make at 3 that wouldn't be as much about football as be about business. But Travis Hunter, don't get me wrong, is a good player. I'm just saying they're going to go with the most exciting pick that they can go. They're going to go Travis Hunter here, right? Get him at 3. The Saints, then they need a guard and a defensive lineman. They're going to go ahead and grab Will Campbell. All right. So the Raiders, now this is the first team that, hey, look, they didn't go out, get anybody. They're looking at quarterback. I think this is the obvious spot where Shedeur Sanders is likely to go. Now, they could surprise you, right? And go running back or something like that, right? Or let's see who else is on the board. Because they could use a wide receiver. They just traded their wide receiver. So they could go Ted McMillan, right? And surprises. Let's live in a world where the Raiders surprise you, right? Because I want to make this as difficult as a decision for the Browns to make as possible. So let's say they go Ted and surprises. And then that causes the Giants to make a decision here. Now, they're probably not going to go Mason Graham. They don't need a running back, but you can make the argument that, hey, let's fix what we did with Saquon Barkley. Get a running back to add to our quarterback. Let's go with that. Let's say they get Ashton Jeanty. Boom. Now the Patriots, they're going to run to the board and probably take, I would say they'd probably take Luther Burton at this point. Let's go Luther Burton. Now it gets interesting. Quarterback, wide receiver, tackle are the needs here for the Titans. The Titans have already spent a lot on their offensive line. There's not a ton here for them to get wide receiver wise, and there's nobody here I would feel comfortable spending a top 10 pick here. So I think they're just going to go best player available and try to wreak as much havoc as possible and go Mason Graham. Right? Put him next to uh all the players that they have in their interior, and that will be a solid defensive line for years to come. Now the Browns are sitting here. A lot of different options, right? What do you do in this situation? The best player on the board is Abdul Carter, and he would be amazing next to Myles Garrett and JOK and all the edge rushers that you have in Cleveland. I would be like understanding if they did not go this route, but you know, I would really want them to go this route. They could also go quarterback. Shador Sanders is on the board here, right? Let's say tight end isn't really somewhere you would go right here, right? And let's look at offensive line, interior, and tackle. You're kind of out the range of where you would want to be here. Me personally, if it comes down to Abdul Carter and Shador, that to me is going to be a gut decision for them to make. And like this is likely to pop up, right? That you're going to have a gut decision to make if you're Andrew Berry, if you're Kevin Stefanski, on what you want to do, because Abdul Carter here would be hard to pass up. But if you truly thought that Shador was a franchise quarterback, then you would go take him. Me personally, if it were me turning the card in, this is my opinion, there's something in me that makes me feel like drafting Shador is not going to work out the way that it feels like it could work out. I don't know why, but there's something about that throws me off. Like, I would be nervous about the Shador pick. I would be ecstatic about the Abdul Carter pick. So I'm just going to go Abdul Carter, right? Like, that to me is where I would be. And that would be the top 10 of this draft. So that's one scenario where the Browns have the 9th pick. Let's run through another scenario here that's Emmanuel. Again, we're going to go through the scenario where the Browns have the 12th pick. This is the order for the Browns having the 12th overall pick. You see you got the Colts in the mix now, the Bears in the mix now, and the Cowboys in the mix in addition to all the teams. It doesn't really change the math at quarterback. You would have to worry about a trade up or something. But if you're in love with Shador, and again, a lot of this hinges on like, hey, how do you feel about all of these quarterbacks in this class? The only one I think is going to have real momentum around the first round with them based on how their season has went is Shador Sanders. Now, that could change. We can get to the combine and shit changes. It happens all the time. But right now, it feels like Shador's the only one. I do think there is a chance that if you're the Browns, you can still fall as far back as the 12 and still have technically your number one guy available. The question is your number one guy in your top 5 of prospects at quarterback, right? Like, is your number one quarterback on your big board top 5 in prospects? If that's the case, okay, you got to take a quarterback then, right? If he's available at 12 or 9. But if you do not feel that way about Shador, if you don't think he's one of the 5 best players or whatever standards you want to use to say that if he's an elite player in this draft, then you stay away from it. Because you don't want to draft the quarterback because people think you're supposed to. You want to draft the quarterback because you're in love with that quarterback. You know that quarterback's going to be great in your system. Good 12th pick here. All right. So this is the 12th pick manual mock draft. The Jacksonville Jaguars, again, let's say they're on the clock here, and they go Kelvin Banks again, or maybe they go Travis Hunter to excite things, or Will Johnson. I had them taking a tackle last time. Let's see what happens if the Jacksonville Jaguars decide to Go get Travis Hunter, number 1 overall. All right. The Jets, now they have needs at all of these different places. Let's say they feel like they need to strengthen their cornerback. Let's go Will Johnson. Let's say cornerback's going top 2 for the first time ever in NFL draft history. All right, the Panthers are on the clock. They're not likely to go quarterback. They need weapons. So let's say they get Ted McMillan. Boom. Go ahead here. The Saints, who need basically line of scrimmage help. The Cam Jordan's getting older. I could see them going Mason Graham here. That would make a ton of sense. And then the Giants are on the clock. And let's say the Giants, they traded for Kirk Cousins, or maybe they traded for Sam Darnold. They're not looking for a quarterback. Maybe they're looking for corner, but corner's not there. I really wouldn't be surprised if they break my heart and take Abdul Carter here, but let's just say they do that just to make this harder on me. So Abdul's gone. All right, the Raiders go by here, and they do what we're all expecting. They take Shador Sanders. Bam. So he's not something you're thinking about at 12. Let's go again here. Wide receiver is available. They need guard, tackle. They go Will Campbell. That's an easy pick for the Patriots. The Tennessee Titans, they go Luther Burden. That makes a ton of sense to me. All right. Now the Cowboys are on the clock. I mean, this seems obvious, right? Like they should go Ashton Genty. So just to recap the picks, this is where we're at. Travis, Will, Ted McMillan, Mason Graham, Abdul Carter, Shador, Will Campbell, Luther Burden, Ashton Genty. All right, now we're at the 10th pick. Offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. Bam, Kelvin Banks. You trade for him. Well, you get him. And then if you are the Colts, what do you go for here? Like with Malachi Starks? They go Malachi Starks. I don't even know if Malachi Starks going to be a top 10 or 11 pick when the draft come around, to be honest with you. But let's say they take the tight end, right? They take Colston Loveland. Let's say they love him. All right. So now you're the Browns, and this is what your board looks like. I'll be honest, if this is what their board looks like, they're probably going to seek out a trade and move back a little bit depending on what they can get. Nothing is looking too attractive there at 12 at quarterback. We could look at wide receiver. Isaiah Bond is there, depending on how you feel about him. That might make sense. I like Elick, but I don't love him at 12. I think 12 is a bit high for him. I think you can still move back and get some value. Nothing at tight end. Running back. No, I'm not going to go Omarion Hampton at running back here first. You could go Josh Simmons, but I don't know. I don't feel great about that either at 12. So let's say you're stuck in this situation where you got to take somebody that you don't feel great about. And let's go Isaiah Bond. You need a playmaker, a wide receiver. You feel like he could be a playmaker, a wide receiver. Boom, you go Isaiah Bond. But that's kind of how the board changes when you move from 9 to 12, or if these guys make some different decisions. Like there's probably going to be a run on wide receiver early in this draft because there's just not a ton of wide receivers in this draft class that you would want to take in the first round. Like we're talking about Mekabuka going 18th or something like that. But let's run into the mock draft simulator, right? Let's do like a regular stock mock draft here. Let's do just one round, see what happens at 8. Okay, so Jalen Milroe goes 7th in the mock draft simulator, right? Which is the kind of natural issue with these to pop up. And then I would just simply go Abdul Carter and then be happy about my day. That would be great. But let's look at this one with the adjusted order. And let's do, you want to do a 3-round mock? Let's do a 3-round mock real quick, right? All right, so the Browns pick at 9 in this one. Let's start the draft. So now we're looking at this draft. Mason Graham went number 1 overall. All right. Cam Ward went number 2. Jalen Milroe went number 3. I don't think any of those things are going to happen, but let's say it does. You got the option of Will Johnson here, who I think would be a great player. Luther Burden, who I think is going to be a great player. You got Kelvin Banks here, who I think a lot of people like at the tackle position. Knowing Andrew Berry, like, is he going to resist? Like, the two of Andrew Berry's biggest temptations will be available here, right? The 5'11", really good, crisp wide receiver, or Will Johnson, the really good corner. Let's say he decides we got enough corners. We already don't know what to do with the two guys that we have here. Let's go Luther Burden. All right, now we're in the second round. This one has Shador available. Now, if Shador or Jalen Milroe or somebody like that is available, I do think the Browns pull the trigger on that, right? Like, if it makes sense for them to do so based on their pre-draft analysis. Let's say that Shador falls all the way to, I don't know. That's just so unrealistic to me that I don't even feel good taking it. Let's say the Browns go edge here. They want to add to what they have. They go JT. So go a different route here. Let's just act like Shador ain't even on the board anymore. You already went wide receiver. So now let's look at some running backs in the third round. You got some interesting guys. Ali Gordon back here. DJ Gittins. Devin Neal is all the way back here. I like him a lot. Let's say they go Ali Gordon. Bam. And that is the 3-round mock with the adjusted order. Let's go with the 3-round mock at the adjusted order at 12 for the Browns. So boom, go through it. All right, so Luther Burden is available to us at 12. Kelvin Banks is available to us here from Texas. Let's go a different route. Let's say the Browns just really want to go tackle. They take Kelvin Banks. How does that change how you would approach round 2? Right, because now you're looking for a wide receiver, and the problem is that there are no wide receivers. Like, maybe you go Xavier Strepo, right? I don't mind him maybe a little bit further back, but if you like the player, you should take the player, right? The only issue with Xavier is that he's not the biggest guy in the world, but super productive dude coming out of the U. So I wouldn't hate that pick, to be honest with you. Quarterback, nobody really there. And then you also want to look at wide receiver, like, okay, who would be there in the third for me, right? Like, do I like any of these names in the third? So I don't love any of these names in the third. Am I in love with any of the best players available right here? You got Omar Norman Lott. It's a big name available right there. Jack Sawyer, Travion Henderson, JT Tuam Tomlin. I already took him in the mod. Let's say the Browns. Let's try to get interesting here, right? Let's say the Browns want to maneuver. They want to get Xavier Strepo and they want to get Omar. So they take Omar because they don't think he's going to last. And let's say they wait a little bit and they try to wait. Like, how many teams want wide receivers? So let's see if he gets past Xavier Strepo. He gets past Carolina. If he gets past Carolina, then all we got to do is hop to 54. We feel good about getting Xavier or somebody else. So let's see what happens here. Okay, so they took JT. All right, let's try to make a move with the Buccaneers and see what it would take to move up. Now, I don't think Pro Football Focus has the updated picks in here. So what I'm going to do first is get our pick, right? We got that 3rd round pick from Buffalo. So let me get my pick real quick. Buffalo, and that is pick, 92? Yes, pick 92 or something like that. It can't be their natural 3rd, right? No, it's Buffalo's 3rd. All right, so let's get Buffalo's 3rd, right? And force this trade. Okay, so, okay, let's pause here. We got that third. Let's see what it can get us. So Tampa Bay, they pick at 54. We're thinking, okay, we pick at 76. How about we swap you 92 for 54 and then throw you 186 and 201. They're not interested. So it doesn't seem like they want to move. How about we give you that same offer to the Commanders? They're not interested. The Texans, let's go here. Are they interested? No, they are not interested. Okay, 51. Nope, not interested. Nope. See if we get a bite from the Falcons. We ain't getting a bite from the Falcons. Okay. All right. That's fine. Let's adjust our strategy. How much do we want some of these picks in the back end? If nobody's biting here, what would they bite on? Would they bite on 76 and 92? They wouldn't. That's crazy. Okay. How about 92, 114, and then you get a third next year? Nope. Xavier Restrepo is just not worth it at these prices. So let's go ahead and just move on and get our third round picks in. All right. So you didn't get the trade that you wanted. Nobody was biting. Where did Restrepo end up going in this mock? He went 62. So maybe I could have moved back a little bit because I was trying to get all the way up. Yeah, maybe I could have moved back a little bit and had more success, but then looked like the price was right there. Nobody a wide receiver, so I guess you're just not going to do that in this year's draft. Let's go run it back now. Ollie Gordon is somebody I like. Let's see here. Hey, did I go quarterback? I haven't gone quarterback yet. So Omar Lott. All right, we're sitting at 76. Carson Beck's available. I mean, this is somebody that people thought was going to be the number one overall pick before having a disappointing year at Georgia. You got to ask yourself, okay, how much stock should we really put in that one bad year? Is it just that all of his talent left? Is he talentless because all of his talent left? Is there really something there in Carson Beck? Let's pull the trigger on Carson Beck, third round pick. And then at 92, you can roll in. And let's go ahead and get you a guard to replace Wyatt Teller, right? Let's see. Who's that tackle? Let's go get a guard. And boom. Those are the mock drafts and the different ways to look at these mock drafts based on how the Browns could end the season. It's a fun little exercise. Basically, what this teaches me is that if you're the Browns and you want a wide receiver in this draft class, you have to be prepared to take that in the first round. If you're not willing to take that guy in the first round, then that changes your free agency plan. I think the Browns are probably going to look for a veteran wide receiver. Other positions, I think you'll be fine drafting later. I think you'll be fine drafting a quarterback in round 3 or 2. I think you'll be fine drafting a offensive guard in rounds 2 or 3. I think you'll be fine with running backs, especially in rounds 2 or 3. I don't think there's really a rush there. But wide receiver, there's some position scarcity. Tackle, there's some position scarcity. You have to ask yourself the question, are the prospects at the top worth it to take at the spot, or are you just taking them at the spot out of pure scarcity too? So that's something to think about too when you're wondering what the Browns are going to do in the draft, or what draft strategy they should do, or what players they should be looking at. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.